So how did you get here today? I know you followed a link and you found this cool YouTube site and you're like, whoa, doggy. And now I broke my thing again. Oh, that's better. But even thinking of what you've learned so far, the bigger perspectives, and we'll talk about the third one in just a minute. If you hold the functionalism or conflict theory, think about the childhood that you had. For some of you that hold to functionalism perspective, you probably had a childhood in which both your parents were there. Probably a pretty loving family. If you played sports, you were probably one of those people who thought professional sports were for the good of everyone because, they promote unity and teamwork and discipline and all these other things. You probably had, I don't want to go into politics quite yet, we'll get there. For religion, you probably had a pastor who was more potentially gospel oriented than law oriented, and Sunday school teachers to boot, who, love everyone was more a message than you're going to hell. And for people who are more of a conflict theorist, you're not the complete opposite of that, don't worry. In fact, those who have conflict theorists, I would imagine, potentially just started noticing conflict earlier in their lives. Maybe it was parents. Maybe it was awesome funness with siblings. Maybe when you played sports, you absolutely hated every moment of it and you saw no fun in it. And so you developed a different sort of mindset. Now, what's funny is when you came out of the womb, none of this was predetermined, and yet your family, your friends, the education slash school that you went to, the church that you went to, the sports that you may or may not have played, all of these started feeding into you different ideas, different notions of what is right, what is wrong, and how we view the world. So how did you get here? We're only a couple lectures in, and already you're starting to see how these bigger forces are starting to impact you. Let's review the two macro theories that we've talked about. First is conflict theory, in which everything is in conflict, progress is made through conflict. And then we have functionalism. Society is one big, happy, functioning machine. Progress is made, just finished breakfast, when we all work together for the greater good, and you have your manifest functions, your latent functions, and your dysfunctions. Our one major micro theory that we're going to talk about is called symbolic interactionism, or the SI approach. Symbolic interactionism is all about shared understandings. When we share understandings on symbols, on pictures, on words, we start to see symbolic interactionism at play. The major proponent of this was another old white gentleman named Herbert Blumer. The symbolic interactionist perspective is a framework for building theory that sees society as the product of everyday interactions of individuals. Remember, people interacting with each other. People are seen as interacting in terms of shared symbols, which would be language and their meanings. Contrasting functionalist and conflict perspectives, symbolic interactionists focus on social interaction in specific situations. In particular, they like to focus on face-to-face interactions, not thinking about the social structures and how they come to predominate in life, not thinking about conflict that's seen everywhere and how that runs everything, but how you saying hi to someone can completely change their attitude, whether for that time being or for the long run. They look at these face-to-face interactions, how we learn to have them, who we learn that from, how we choose to engage in those face-to-face interactions, and how important they are. Key concepts for symbolic interactionists are, in particular, symbols, which predominantly is language and its meanings, interactions amongst people, and then really shared meanings. Remember back to your in-groups. Remember back to your primary groups. All of these groups, you probably have shared meanings that other groups don't have. You have that one story or that one time where Uncle Jim did, and that's really all you have to say, and everybody knows what you're talking about. These shared meanings. That's what symbolic interaction is focused on. Although this perspective was influenced by Max Weber, we'll talk about him at some point in time, Weber argued that we could never understand larger patterns of behavior unless we learned the subjective meanings that people attach to their actions. The key person associated with this perspective is the American Herbert Blumer, pictured on your screen. Blumer was a sociology professor at UC Berkeley. He developed the term in symbolic interactionism. He believed that people act on things based on the meanings that they have attached to them. And these meanings develop through interactions with others. Through a continual process of interaction and interpretation, people arrive at shared meanings that govern behavior and ultimately shape society. I'm going to end this here because when I come back, I want to play with your head a little bit. So I'll see you in just a couple of minutes.